Monsters Inc. is a lovely, lovely movie. For those of you who haven't seen it, I recommend watching it. It's pretty much a cinematic masterpiece. It's so good. Everything from the opening credits to the dumb jokes to just how well written and really funny this movie is. It feels like everyone working on this put in 110% throughout the whole thing. It's a movie about a world in which monsters exist and live in some sort of alternate sort of reality from humans. Basically, the monsters have to scare children by traveling through these special doors into their rooms. And once the scaring has been done, the monsters return, having created electricity through, I guess, the sound of the children's screams. How does it work? Is it ethical? These are questions that fucking nerds ask. And to be honest, I don't care for nerds. Anyway, this movie details the journey of two monsters. One scarer named Sully Sullivan, and one engineer-type fellow named Mike Wazowski who gets stuck with a human child, which is deemed extremely dangerous by the culture of the monster world. It's an interesting and really funny, cool, awesome, dope, super sexy plot, and this movie introduces the viewer to its world in a very concise and interesting way. I don't mean to be negative, but I feel like so many movies with similar ambitions to Monsters Inc. either get caught up in the technical stuff in the world building, whereas Monsters Inc. does this perfectly. This movie is an intensely human experience of what it means to care for someone else. And even though later Pixar movies may be way more tear-inducing, this one feels so genuine. Monsters Inc. was a signal of the dominance of Pixar for years to come. While Shrek beat out this movie for an Oscar, which is a travesty, it would soon become obvious to everyone that Pixar was the top dog. Studios like Disney's own in-house studio, DreamWorks, and Blue Sky would be stuck playing second fiddle for over a decade. In the case of Blue Sky, they would be playing like the seventh fiddle probably. This movie also established many of the trends that Pixar films would follow. Sad, yet also happy endings, a fixation on the life of a child, and even more proof that Randy Newman do not fucking miss. Apart from that, this movie was also a landmark in terms of hair. At this point, while the animation in Pixar movies looked pretty good, there was definitely a lot of growing pains. I don't want to undermine the effort that went into making Toy Story look as good as it did, but this movie has much less uncanny valley moments, apart from all the human characters, except for Boo, I guess. But you know what? At least this movie didn't feature those unfathomable leg joints that keep me up at night. This shit is horrifying. Compare this to Monsters Inc., whose main characters are some of the best in any Pixar movie. Monsters Inc. has Sully and this guy, whose name I will not say because his face is covered, which is a hilarious bit. They've also got Snail Woman and Snake Woman, which covers the Patty.io standards for representation in film. The characters in this movie are so likable and relatable. I'm sure we've all been Mike Wazowski, getting dragged around with your friend, and while at first you resented their interests, you slowly learn to support them. Hell, I'm sure we've all even been Randalls. Just kidding. If you've ever been Randall, please donate to my Patreon. It's the only way to repent. Across all worlds of art, there are sequences and works and moments that I think serve as evidence that something at this level of concentrated beauty and precision can be done. I think of the alternate reality episode of Community, that one really tight, great montage in Parasite, or the first 30 minutes of Breath of the Wild. And also kind of all of Breath of the Wild. That game is spectacular. It's hard to define these, but I would argue this movie has a pretty unique one, that being these opening credits. I don't want to go too far in depth, as there's a full interview I will link in the description, but all you really need to know is A, this is an artistic marvel, filled with creativity mixed with the artistic precision only the best of the best could ever pull off. And B, Randy Newman still does not fucking miss. Compared to Toy Story, it's a lot harder to define where Monsters Inc. should be in the context of Pixar as a whole. It's really good, don't get me wrong, it has impressive technical stuff, and it really cemented Pixar's dominance and proved that the potential of animation was far higher than anyone could imagine. It's a good movie with a lot of heart, and while it's not even close to the levels of what Pixar would go on to do in movies like WALL-E and Ratatouille, it's still very funny and dope and awesome and cool and really good, and I like it, and boom. So that was Monsters Inc. That movie, it's so good. They create some absolute masterpieces, and Monsters Inc. is definitely one of them. Anyway, make sure to subscribe, give me money on my Patreon if you want, follow me on Twitter. Goodbye, and see ya.